Alright guys, this is William again, and in this video I want to show you how to create this call to action for Boss Coffee brand using Adobe After Effects. We're going to be using some stock videos as a simple background. You can use pictures if you want to. We're going to use a Santory branding, and we're going to use a coffee can which I cut out in Adobe Photoshop and save it as a PSD file. So this is just a PSD file. So let's get started in After Effects. Alright, so one thing here is I'm just going to drag these three files in here. So these will be my background layers and the Boss Coffee branding there. And notice that I did not bring the Photoshop file together with them, because when you're working with Photoshop files with transparency, you want to bring them on their own. This is really important that you follow that guideline. Just drag that on its own, because After Effects is going to tell you or ask you the question, hey, this is a PSD file. How do you want to bring it in? By default, it is a footage. A footage means it's a flattened layer which will be similar to a JPEG. You don't want that. You want to change it to composition, retain layer sizes. This is a really vital step that you must follow. All right, I'm going to press OK here, and everything comes in right here. That is good. All right, so I'm going to create a new composition. Go to composition, new, and we're going to follow the pretty much standard HT 19201080 25 frames per second. I'm going to change the duration to just 5 seconds, which will be just right for our call to action duration. And lastly, I'm going to press OK. We're ready to start. First of all, I'm going to use this drink video layer. So I'm going to drag and drop in here. This is a 4K file, so this is a massive file. So I'm going to press S to open up my scale attribute. And I'm going to drag it down to about 50%. Doesn't have to be precise. I'm going to move it to the side here because it's going to be just a little backdrop, as you can see in this video here. All right, so to apply the mask, I'm going to use the Santory branding right on top of the layer. Remember, this layer needs to go on top of that, and I'm going to drag it to the side. Now, when you're working with logos and elements, just try not to put it too close to the edge. That wouldn't look very good. So just make sure there's enough padding around the area. Okay, that looks fine, and I'm going to apply the mask here. So what we're going to use is we're going to use what we call the matte in Adobe After Effects. Matte is basically very similar to Photoshop layer mask. What we're going to use is we're going to use the black and white information of this layer as a mask. By default, if we do it correctly, the areas which are marked white will be visible, will show whatever that's underneath. The black will hide it. All right, let's see how we can apply it. So to apply the mask, what you must come down is to the bottom left corner of the After Effects and make sure this transfer controls pane is open. If you don't, you won't see anything here. So what you want to do is turn it on, and now we can see the mode, track matte, etc. To make it simple, I will also rename the layers. So I'm going to press enter and call it mask. You can call it mask, you can call it matte. I'm going to change this one as a drink video. Okay. Now we are basically going to apply mask to the drink video, right? So what we want to do is select the drink video, go to the track matte. Do you see that no matte one right now? Change it to mask. Okay, that applies there. You can also see there are a couple more information that's available right now. But let's take a look at the video now. It doesn't look anything like what we expected. It doesn't show anything because now it is treating as a transparency mask, which isn't exactly what we're looking for. This is how After Effects works. When you apply a mask, by default, it gives you the alpha matte. So we don't want the alpha matte. What we want to do is we want to change it to a luma matte. So again, a very simple thing, you just need to select and click on that, and it will change to luma matte right away. Now we can see our effects appearing just like that. That looks pretty good. So in order to add a little bit of extra spin, I'm going to use a shape mask on my matte. Okay, what I did here, if you look at carefully or closely, there's a very subtle effect of how the text appears just like that. There's a really simple line appearing just here. Sort of like a fan effect. All right, so we're going to do that by selecting my mask or the matte layer. Going to pick up the pen tool and I'm going to draw a really simple shape. You can draw any shape that you like. I'm going to do something like 5-point shape like this that we can animate this way. With this mask available, just make sure the mask is drawn onto the mask layer. Okay, I'm going to press M to open up the mask path. Now with this little icon, we can animate this. But we want to set the time we want to animate maybe from 2 seconds onwards, that's where I want to animate it. Gonna turn on the mask path, bring this one a little bit lower. Also, you might want to change to the move tool so that we can animate it easier. Okay, next one, I'm gonna go to maybe just about 3 seconds. I don't need a very long draggy animation. I just want to keep it very fast and swift. So I'm gonna drag them up like this. So it will create an effect like this, but you can add a bit more spin, just sort of organizing the little ups and downs to create little waves here. So you see that the mask goes up like that, which looks nicer. So if we play it nicely, it will create this effect. All right, it looks good, but I don't want my logo to have the video all the way. I wanted to replace with the simple black and white logo because that's how branding should be. So to do that, I don't want to drag another Santory layer and try to position it again because I already have the Santory layer, which looks like a mask right now. So all I need to do is select this layer, press Command D or Control D on the PC to duplicate that. This time around, I'm going to rename it, call it logo. Notice that this is also hidden, so I'm going to unhide the layer. So it looks like this now. So this is going to be covering the video that we've done earlier. So that's not very good. So what we're going to do is we're going to move that little line here and drag it all the way to maybe about 3 second ref here. So here we are, the logo appears, but the logo appears just pop like that. I think it's a little bit too harsh. So I'm going to add transparency. So I'm going to select that, press T for opacity. If you look at that, the opacity value just pops right up. So I'm going to turn on the animation, bring it down to 0%. So the logo should disappear, and then go to about maybe 4 seconds. And I'm going to bring that opacity all the way up to 100%. Now we have the logo animated nicely and simply. Very nice. And lastly, I would just add the URL. So I'm going to use the type tool, type something, Boss Coffee, any URL that you like. I'm going to bring it down there, change the color to white color. I'm also going to change the typeface to DIN medium. That looks nicer. Roughly there. And lastly, I will apply the raining characters in effects. So I'll go to effects and presets here, type raining, and there's raining characters in. So I'm just going to drag, making sure that it appears only from 3 seconds onwards. So drag and drop on the text layer so that you will see the text dropping just like that. Pretty nice. Okay, notice that it didn't even finish it. So I need to reorganize my animation a little bit because I apply a little bit too late so that my animation still goes on after 5 seconds. So what you want to do here is you're going to press U to open up my keyframes. Notice that I can see the starting keyframe, the end keyframe's not here because it's outside the 5 seconds mark. So I'm going to temporarily drag it a little bit here. Now we can see the keyframe here. All you need to do is just drag it much closer, and we can now push them back here where they should be. So now the animation will happen like that, much faster, and this just nice. So you can adjust the positioning of this keyframe wherever you want it to finish. Maybe I'll mark it about 4 seconds. There we are, it looks good. So the next part is going to be the can animation. So let's take a look at the video again one more time. And what we're gonna have is we're gonna have these cans coming out like that. So we'll also add some fake reflections to create it a little bit nicer effect here. And that's what we're gonna do. So let's find out how to do it. So I'm gonna go back to the project so that we have the coffee cans there. One thing that you might want to take note as well, this is a composition. How can we tell is by looking at the icons. So this is a video file, this is a JPEG or image file, and this is a composition file. So composition files basically means there is more inside there. They're more like grouped objects in a way. Anyway, I'm just going to drag them in right here. And here it is. And one of the things we want to do is also lock these layers that we're done working with so that we don't accidentally touch them, move them, leave them be. Now we want to focus on the cans, right? So now the cans here, and that is okay. And what I want to do here is I want to actually go inside the composition to create the reflection effect. This is going to be slightly complex, but look at here. What we're going to do is, because this is a composition, I can double click on that, to go inside the composition, you notice that it opens up a new composition here. It says layer 1, which is our coffee layer. What I'm going to do here, I'm going to press Command D or Control D on the keyboard to duplicate this can. All right, so I've got a duplicate here. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to flip it upside down so that it will look like a reflection. And I'm going to drag it down. And also, since it's a reflection, it should be below the layer. So I'm going to change the name of the reflection. And I'm going to change the name of that to Ken. And drag the reflection below the Ken. So that's fine, but I find it a little bit too strong. So we're going to press T for opacity and bring down the opacity a little bit. If you want a cooler effect, what you can also do is create a mask. You can create a little mask like that, but the cool thing about the mask is after you create a mask, you can hit F on the keyboard to open up the feather, and then you can just adjust the feather value to see how the fall off appears right there. And you can see that with the full opacity, the feather effect looks much nicer. You can see how the feather affects here, and you can actually see how far you want the fall off to appear, which creates a much more pleasant effect right there. I'm going to bring the opacity a little bit lower to maybe about 50%, and with the fall off effect feather about 50, that creates a really nice balance of rather convincing reflection here. That looks good, and I'm just going to close this composition. Now we're going back to the main composition, and you notice that this Boss Coffee can now has a reflection. That's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to animate the position and scale. So I'm going to select the Boss Coffee can, press S for the scale. And I'm also going to hold down the Shift key and press P for position to be added up. All right, at this point, I'm going to go to 1 second, turn on the position and scale like that, because this is where I want the can to end it. Now I'm going to drag back all the way to the beginning and bring down the scale all the way to about 0%. And I'm also going to hold down the Shift key and press the down arrows probably about 4 or 5 times so that the can is starting a little bit lower position. This is optional, but it's nicer. There we go, we have this animation, which looks good. Now we want to add 2 more cans behind it. This is pretty simple. We're going to press Command D to duplicate it. And then we're going to press U to open up the keyframes here. So this time around, I would assume this as the big can. I'm going to call it big can. And I'm going to change the name to small can. We're going to have 2 cans, right? So for the small can, at this 1 second, I'm going to drag it to the left and hit S for scale and scale it a little bit smaller. That should just do it, just like that. That looks pretty good. I'm going to press Command D to duplicate the small can again. This time around, I'm going to move this one to the side so that they come out like this. Which looks good, but I don't like the way they all appear at the same time. I think that's a bit boring. So I'm going to select the 2 bottom layers and I'm going to move them a little bit, probably about 4 or 5 frames away, so that they have a little bit of that hierarchy and order. Lastly, I think the 1 second animation was a little bit too far. So I'm going to select all the keyframes, press U, select all the keyframes and move them a little bit forward so that the animation can be quite quick and fast. There we go, guys. This is the call to action animation that you can use for Boss Coffee. It's really simple. You're using just PSD images, JPEG files, and stock videos to create the background. Give it a go and all the best.